Chapter 91 Transfer. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the illusion, Andrew smiled at Professor Charles and said, "Professor, we meet again." Demon King. Professor Charles was stunned for a moment, then asked, "Are you here to sign a soul contract with me?" "Yes, as long as you are willing to give me your soul after death, I will help you survive the cosmic storm." Andrew said that normal people will have superpowers when they are radiated by cosmic storms, but no one knows what will happen to mutants. Andrew is not a blank wolf. Professor Charles hesitated, and after a moment, he said tiredly, "I can give you my soul, but I hope you can help me save the mutant family." "I can save mutants, but to be honest, Professor, your soul is not worth that much." Andrew shook his head and refused. Saving mutants requires a lot of thought and energy. Although the professor's soul is precious, it is not that precious. There is only one possibility for Andrew to save mutants, and that is for all mutants to give their souls to him. "Hey, wait, what if I build a mutant utopia?" An idea suddenly came to Andrew's mind, and he said, "Professor, make a decision. As a distinguished guest, I can give you an extra piece of news as a gift, news that is crucial to the life and death of mutants." "Life or death?" "Okay, I'll sign." Professor Charles sighed and agreed. He was not afraid of death, but he couldn't die. The mutants needed him. "Very good." Andrew nodded with satisfaction, and after Professor Charles finished signing the contract, he said, "Have you heard of Worthington Research Laboratory?" Professor Charles nodded. "I heard that Worthington is a famous pharmaceutical company in the United States. They have a mutant called Leech on their hands." Andrew explained the antidote in detail. Their goal is to develop an antidote for mutants and turn all mutants back into ordinary people. Professor Charles angrily shouted, "Mutants have no antidote and do not need an antidote." "That's what you think." Andrew said, "There is government support behind the Worthington Research Laboratory. If you do nothing, they will develop an antidote. It will be non-permanent at first and permanent later. I believe you know what will happen then." Professor Charles said firmly, "I will never allow this to happen." "That's your business, Professor. Goodbye." Andrew smiled and sent Professor Charles's consciousness back to his body. Then, with a wave of his hand, several rays of magic flew into everyone's bodies. In addition to Professor Charles, Sloane, Mystique Raven, Toad, Big Steel Tooth, Weightless, the Fantastic Three, and Hawkeye Barton also chose to sign contracts and exchange their souls after death for their survival. The harvest is good. Andrew nodded with satisfaction. At the same time, the tungsten rod was about to hit Washington. Countless citizens chose to sign soul contracts in exchange for their own survival, including a large number of SHIELD agents. The number of aircraft is limited, and many SHIELD agents have no way to escape and can only hide in underground bases. "Very good." Demon King Andrew raised his left hand in hell, a space ripple flashed through, the burning tungsten rod suddenly disappeared, leaving only a line in English in the sky, "I will be back." The citizens of Washington looked at the sky in confusion. "What's going on?" "Never mind. Also, what does it mean to come back again? Will that tungsten rod appear again? How about playing?" "It's just a joke, don't take it so seriously." Andrew smiled and quietly sent the accelerated tungsten rod to Mephisto Hell. He was an old friend. There were benefits. Of course he couldn't be forgotten. In Mephisto Hell, Mephisto is commanding a group of demons to beat his son Black Heart Demon, yes, beating his own son. He has been in a bad mood recently and needs to use the Black Heart Demon's screams to relieve his stress. Guyi's strength has not declined, and he is colluding with that kid, which is troublesome. Mephisto frowned. The Ancient One intercepted the Lord of Hell and the demon god outside, and the boy harvested souls inside and drove away other demon believers. The two of them cooperated, and soon there would be no place for them on the earth. What's even more troublesome is that with the strength of Guyi and that kid, a small fight is of no use to them. It has to be a big one. Mephisto thought secretly, and at this moment, a loud roar suddenly came from the west, and the terrible vibration even reached here. Mephisto was stunned, and then immediately teleported to the scene of the incident, and found that the entire city was shaking crazily, countless buildings collapsed, and countless demons died tragically. At the same time, a large high-temperature pit appeared in the middle of the city. Hot magma bubbled out crazily from the pit, but the ground was penetrated. Mephisto was furious, and with a wave of his left hand, all the demons that were not dead were transferred away. Then, he pressed down with his right hand, and the shaking of the city suddenly stopped. After solving the disaster, Mephisto clasped his hands in reverse time to view the past. The Hell Lords have great power in this hell, including controlling time. However, the degree varies. The weak ones can only see the images of the past, and the strong ones can play with the timeline at will, such as the senior otaku Crimson Demon God. Mephisto is at a medium level. Although he cannot change the past, he can speed up and slow down time. However, he generally does not do that because it consumes too much magic power. Where is Andrew at? Well, regardless of this matter, we are still friends. Soon, the image of the past appeared in front of Mephisto. A burning tungsten rod fell from the sky and slammed into the Castlevania. The city turned over and collapsed like an earth dragon. This stick comes from another world. Why didn't I sense the invasion? Mephisto was frightened and angry. He struggled to sense the breath on the tungsten rod. After a moment, he concluded that the stick came from the earth. There is only one truth. Mephisto solved the case in an instant. It was the Ancient One who was taking revenge on him. Only the Ancient One could invade his hell without being sensed by him. Only the Ancient One could do this with such great skill. The space gem can also do the same. As for why Gui took revenge on him, this is completely normal, either because he called her an old woman, or because he instigated other demon kings to trouble her some time ago. Well, the former is more likely. Mephisto was very angry. It didn't matter that the city was destroyed. He rebuilt several cities every minute, but he couldn't resurrect the dead demon and suffered heavy losses. Mephisto roared angrily towards the sky, Ancient One, I'm not done with you. Kamatage, the Ancient One is elegantly sunbathing and drinking tea, and it's great to have someone to deal with all kinds of disasters on your behalf. At this time, Gui sensed something. He bent his finger and knocked forward, and a muffled hum sounded. Then, the little boy outside the timeline shouted dissatisfied, Gui, why do you keep stopping me? Franklin, this is not the timeline you're supposed to be in. Ancient One said, go back, Dr. Reed can't fight Andrew, it's useless for you to help him. It's because that idiot can't defeat the Demon King that I have to help him. Franklin gritted his teeth and said, I shouldn't have faith in that guy. When I was 3 years old, I was better at picking up girls than he was, and I admired his talent. I almost vomited after hearing this. Gui couldn't help but laugh, and she said, the conflict between you and the Demon King is just about being born early or being born late. If you please him, he will let you be born early. Franklin shouted, I will never please him, Ancient One, let me in, I still have a chance. Go back. It's not a shame for a son to please his father. Ancient E shook his head and blocked Franklin. The world was already chaotic enough, and there must be no more problems with the timeline. Thinking of something, Gui looked up and looked outside the timeline. A large group of people were trying to break through the blockade of the time stone. She couldn't help but shake her head. Why do so many people like to travel through the timeline? Don't they know that this will cause greater disasters? Chapter 92 Superpower. You are listening at MTnovel. An hour after the space-based disaster, a Quinjet burning with black fire flew to the space station. Immediately afterwards, Andrew walked out of the Quinjet with Natasha in a spacesuit. Why is Andrew here? Of course, it was to save the people in the space station. As for Natasha, she strongly requested to come together, and Andrew took her with him. In addition, the current version of the Quinjet uses a turbine engine and cannot go into space. It will be upgraded to a plasma engine later to have the ability to go into space. In the movie, Hulk took the Quinjet to outer space. This is why Andrew demonized the Quinjet with hellfire. What a miserable space station. Fortunately, it no longer belongs to me. Andrew looked at the dilapidated space station and smiled. Natasha shook her head and said, I hope Tony lives and feels sorry for this space station. Among superheroes, he should be the most unlucky one. He is kidnapped every now and then. You can change his name to Kidnapper in the future. While talking, the two walked into the space station and found that everyone fell to the ground, including Tony Stark in the suit. Natasha hurriedly stepped forward to check everyone. After a while, she said happily, they are all still alive. More than alive. Andrew's eyes flashed slightly. Both the Fantastic Four and the mutants had extremely strong vitality. In other words, they had all been strengthened. To be honest, Andrew is looking forward to what kind of changes Mystique and the others will have. It's not appropriate to stay here for a long time. Let's go back. Andrew picked up Susan and said to Natasha, Susan and Frank are my people. I will take them away. You can handle the rest by yourself. Although Nick Fury said that he would take everyone back, Natasha did not dare to oppose Andrew at all. She nodded and said gratefully, Thank you Mr. Wong for helping us. Then, Andrew brought everyone back to Earth via Quinjet. Pepper received the news and cried with joy. She was determined to make Tony give up being a superhero. Being a superhero is too dangerous. If Tony wants to be as powerful as Ghost Rider, Pepper will have no objection. The problem is, he is not good enough and is kidnapped every day. Soon, the Hellfire Quinjet landed at the rocket base, and a group of agents came out to help. It is worth mentioning that John Garrett did not come out. It was not that he neglected Andrew, but that he did not dare to meet Andrew. The reason is simple, Garrett is a Hydra, and Pierce has given an order that all Hydras should stay away from Andrew to prevent him from discovering the existence of Hydra. Hydra is full of fear towards Andrew, not only because he is powerful, but also because he can see through sin. Then, Andrew drove Susan and Frank back to the Rebirth group. As for Firefox, he had no interest in it and left it to S.H.I.E.L.D. for the time being. It is worth mentioning that the X-Men were also at the rocket base. They wanted to take Professor Charles back to the Mutant Academy. S.H.I.E.L.D. was reluctant and the two sides quarreled. At this time, the Red Devil woke up by coincidence. He shook his head and teleported away. The harvest this time is really good, more than 100,000 soul contracts from professors, Dr. Reed and others, cosmic storms, space gems, each one is better than the last, mutants, really good people. Andrew secretly lamented that at this point, the space-based disaster incident has come to an end, but the storm it caused has just begun. People are becoming more and more hateful towards mutants, and some people are even attacking mutants on the street. This has led to more and more mutants wanting to become ordinary people, and there is not enough space in Times Square. In addition, various countries are very dissatisfied with S.H.I.E.L.D., which failed to prevent the space-based disaster. Nick Fury's status is shaky. In order to keep him, Pierce visits those high-level officials every day, and his words are almost dry. Nick Fury is very grateful to Pierce. Without him, it would have been impossible for him to become the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., let alone hold this position for more than 10 years. What Nick Fury didn't know was that Pierce had secretly scolded him bloody. If Hydra hadn't needed Nick Fury to be its chief, he would never have worked desperately for Nick Fury. Although Nick Fury is not Hydra, everything he does is more Hydra than Hydra. As for why the tungsten rod over Washington suddenly disappeared, the common theory is that a mysterious mutant took action. Because of the words he left behind, many people in Washington chose to move. President Ellis even left the White House to work elsewhere. God knows when that tungsten rod will come back. In addition to the above, there is another big thing, that is, the share price of Stark Group has collapsed again. On the one hand, the space station was destroyed and the Stark Group suffered heavy losses. On the other hand, during the transformation period, the Stark Group relied entirely on Iron Man to support its business. Now that Iron Man has been kidnapped one after another, investors have lost confidence in him, and the stock price has naturally plummeted. Pepper was so busy with this that she had to say that it was a blessing that Tony Stark could find such a good woman in his previous life. Internationally, there is a well-known arms group called the McCarran Group. At this moment, McCarran, the president of the McCarran Group, is watching the report on the space-based disaster incident. Threaten the whole world with space-based weapons? What a great idea! Macallan touched his chin and decided to make one himself. With the technology of Macallan Group, he should be able to do it. Half a month later, at a shooting range owned by the Rebirth Group, Frank held a gun with both hands and kept shooting at the target. When all the bullets were fired, he threw away the two guns, shook his hands, and two guns appeared out of thin air in his hands. Susan exclaimed, "Wow, Frank, your superpower is really cool. If you use this power for smuggling, you will definitely become a billionaire." Andrew said that Frank's special power is storage space. Although it is a bad ability in the novel, in reality, it is quite powerful. Susan complained, "You are an angel, why do you have so many criminal thoughts in your mind?" "It's just a suggestion." Andrew shrugged, and Frank turned around and said, "Money means nothing to me. I like this power. I can carry an arsenal with me in the future." "You don't care about money," Andrew said to Susan, "Fire Frank. He doesn't care about money, but he works for us. He is either greedy for your body or mine." "Nonsense." Susan hammered Andrew, and Frank couldn't help but roll his eyes. "Why don't I care about money? Is it because I follow you, the devil?" Money is nothing to Frank anymore. What he cares about is lifespan, and he wants all his family to live a long life. Andrew asked, "Susan, how are you mastering your powers?" "I have two powers, one is invisibility and the other is energy barrier. Among them, I have mastered energy barrier," Susan said, "but invisibility still works sometimes." Andrew touched his chin and asked in a low voice, "Like the last time you were wandering around in front of me without any clothes on, and then suddenly lost your ability?" Chapter 93 Upgrade. You are listening at MTnovel. "What did you say?" Susan blushed and spat at Andrew. Andrew smiled, took out a uniform from the side and said, "The key to controlling invisibility is emotion. In addition, this suit has been modified by the cosmic storm and can become invisible with you." This uniform was the one Susan wore on the space station. She took it over excitedly and said, "It's great. With this, you don't have to worry about losing your abilities anymore." "I think it's nice to have it fail once in a while," Andrew said. Susan rolled her eyes at Andrew. She thought of something and said, "Andrew, I want to go see Jonathan. I don't know how he is doing." At this point, Susan glared at Andrew dissatisfied, "Why don't you bring Jonathan back? S.H.I.E.L.D. can't believe it at all." "I forgot, I haven't seen your brother before." Andrew spread his hands with an innocent face. Human Torch Jonathan's ability was indeed good, but Andrew had no intention of subduing him, because that guy was a troublemaker, and Andrew had no interest in cleaning up the mess for his brother-in-law. The Human Torch should be left to S.H.I.E.L.D. "I believe S.H.I.E.L.D. will be very grateful for his generosity," Susan said. "You're not too busy. Let's go. I hope he's okay, and I hope he doesn't get any superpowers. Otherwise, with his character, he will definitely get into trouble." Andrew smiled and said, "You are indeed my biological sister." S.H.I.L.D.'s Island Prison is located off the coast of New York. In addition to imprisoning criminals, it is also responsible for conducting some shady experiments, such as vampire immortality experiments, abomination research experiments, X-gene experiments, etc. Mystique and others are now all locked up in the laboratory of the island prison. Yes, it's a laboratory, not an ordinary prison, and S.H.I.E.L.D. wants to know the impact of the cosmic storm on them. For their own safety, Mystique and the others were held in separate cells, with two heavily armed guards standing at the door. John Garrett looked at Mystique, who was tightly tied up on the bed, and sighed, "God is really unfair. You committed such a big crime. Not only did you not die, your mutant abilities were also upgraded." The reason John Garrett is here is because Coulson finally returned to New York and he was assigned to run the island prison. "I fight for mutants, what crime do I have?" Mystique sneered. Garrett bent down, as if he wanted to get closer to talk to Mystique. At this moment, Mystique's neck suddenly lengthened, and she opened her mouth and bit Garrett's neck. This is one of Mystique's upgraded abilities, which allows her body to partially transform. Garrett was well prepared and dodged in time. Then, he pressed Mystique's head with his big hands and sneered, "Do you think I'm that stupid?" Mystique, I'm warning you, don't attack the experimenters again. Otherwise, don't blame me for not giving Professor Charles face. Mystique gritted her teeth and shouted, kill me if you can, I will never be your human experiment. Want to die? I'm sorry, you are destined to be an experiment in your life. By the way, did I tell you that Trask Industries is applying to transfer you to their side? They miss you very much. Garrett sneered and turned to leave the room. Mystique roared hysterically, but it was of no use. Outside the room, Garrett asked the doctor waiting there, is Mystique's new ability confirmed? It's almost there, the limbs are partially deformed. The doctor nodded and said, the other mutants are very uncooperative and have been hiding their abilities. We need to continue research. Then keep researching, and next, focus on other people. Garrett snorted coldly and left with the doctor. In the room, Mystique, who had been yelling, flashed a cold look in her eyes. After acting for so long, that bastard Garrett finally let down his guard. Garrett, you're going to pay. Mystique secretly gritted her teeth. 2 days later, she was wearing handcuffs and anklets and being escorted by guards for experiments. On the road, she saw a short mutant wearing a light bulb helmet. This short mutant, nicknamed Scan, is a member of the Brotherhood of Mutants. He has the abilities of mental scanning and mental communication. S.H.I.E.L.D. is very interested in his abilities and has been studying him. As for the helmet on the scanning head, it is a special device. Once the scanning uses mental power, the light bulb on the helmet will glow. Seeing Mystique, Scan nodded to her. The guard behind him pushed him hard and cursed, "Get away, monster." Although Scan was angry, he didn't dare to resist. Mystique saw this and hit Scan hard with her shoulder when he passed by her, and at the same time cursed, "Trash. Be honest." The guard electrocuted Mystique. Although Mystique screamed, she had no intention of surrendering. Then, she resisted the experiment as usual. No one knew that her goal had been achieved. At night, Mystique, who was injured, wrapped herself in a sheet. Then, her body fluctuated and turned into a scanned image. Successful, mental scan. Mystique activated her powers, and the situation in the entire island prison was reflected in her mind, including Magneto in the plastic glass room. She was overjoyed and used her mental power to contact Magneto. "Eric, I'm here." Magneto, who was playing chess with himself, was stunned. He asked with his consciousness, "Riven, why can you communicate with me mentally?" Mystique said proudly, "The cosmic storm has strengthened my abilities. Not only can I control the deformation of my limbs, but I can also copy other people's X genes. However, I have to come into contact with the other party, and I can only record one type of X gene. If I change it to another type, the previously recorded X gene will disappear." While communicating with Magneto, Mystique also brought the spirits of Toad and Big Teeth into the group chat. After hearing what Mystique said, Toad was very excited. "Great, we can finally get revenge." Raven, why did you bring Big Steel Fong in? He has no brains." "I'm used to it. In the past, there were always 4 of us in meetings." Mystique smiled, and at this moment, Big Steel Tooth suddenly said, "Who do you think has no brain?" "I'm fine, Magneto, thank you for taking care of me all these years." The voice of Big Steel Tooth, or Saber-Toothed Tiger, is filled with deep resentment. Over the years, Magneto has used him frequently. Saber-Toothed Tiger is Wolverine's half-brother, and his brain was damaged due to some things. Magneto said, "You're welcome, I should do it. Congratulations on your return to normal." Saber-Toothed Tiger was furious. He was about to say something when Mystique said, "Don't argue. The most important thing for us now are 2 things, escaping from the island prison and letting me get in touch with Charles." "Contact Charles." Magneto was stunned for a moment, then asked in surprise, "Riven, what do you mean?" "Yes, I want to finish what Charles should have done long ago." Mystique said, "Eric, do you have any objection?" "Of course not. I've been waiting for this day for a long time." Magneto said excitedly, "Riven, tell me all the information you know, and I will make a plan." Okay, with the ability to scan, it won't be difficult for us to escape. Mystique nodded and said, there are many mutants in the island prison, and more importantly, S.H.I.E.L.D. has no way to limit the abilities of mutants. Very good. Toad looked excited, not only for being able to escape from here, but also for Mystique's new plan. Chapter 94 The Fantastic Three. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. I'm not interested in joining you. I'm no longer the fool who let you do what you did before. The saber-toothed tiger snorted coldly. He had no interest in exterminating mankind. He only wanted to do one thing now, and that was to have fun with his brother and express the warm brotherly love with his claws and knives. Big Ganya, without us, you can't escape from this prison. Magneto said, we help you get out of prison, and you help us complete our plan. From now on, we will owe nothing to each other. You can do whatever you want, how about it? Sabretooth thought for a while, nodded and said, okay, let's help each other, Jimmy is an X-Men now anyway. Very good. Magneto nodded, and then Mystique told Magneto the details of the island prison. After hearing this, Magneto quickly formulated a plan. After discussing with Magneto, Mystique took back her mental power. She gritted her teeth and thought, I hate it when others experiment on me. All the experimenters in the island prison will die. No one knew that the second half of the space-based disaster was about to begin. At this time, Andrew was driving Susan to a hospital in S.H.I.E.L.D., but halfway, they received some bad news. Ben and the others were not in the hospital, they were fighting Spider-Man and Spider-Woman on the street. The cause of the matter starts with Ben. Unlike the other three heroes, Ben is rather sad. He turned into a stone man weighing hundreds of kilograms. He could not accept his change at all and escaped from the hospital to seek comfort from his fiancée. Then, the fiancée called the police. Are you kidding me? A stone man weighing several hundred kilograms comes out of nowhere and says he is your fiancée. If it were you, you would call the police. Facing the police, Ben was very angry. I want you to take care of my fiancé when I see him. So, a conflict broke out, and then Spider-Man came to help and used spider silk to make the thing fall down. Dr. Reed and the Human Torch who arrived saw this and immediately stopped Spider-Man. The Human Torch had just gained superpowers and was very arrogant. He wanted to compete with Spider-Man, so the conflict expanded and the two sides fought. Spider-Woman and Jessica Jones happened to be passing by. They had a relationship with Spider-Man and immediately helped Spider-Man deal with the Fantastic Three. My girlfriend fights another girlfriend's brother-in-law. Who wrote this script? Come out and I promise not to beat you to death. Andrew was speechless. When Susan saw the live broadcast on Quaisho, she hurriedly said, Andrew, hurry over and don't let them continue to fight. Sit tight. Andrew did not refuse and headed towards the conflict site at full speed. At the same time, he quietly sent a message to Director George. This message was detailed information about the Fantastic Three. After reading it, Director George was overjoyed and immediately dispatched a helicopter to the scene of the conflict. Director George was crazy to want a supernatural policeman. In the opinion of Director George, Dr. Reed, Human Torch, and Ben are all suitable to be extraordinary police officers, and he will go there to recruit them personally. The battle is continuing at the door of Stone Man Ben's house. Jessica punched Dr. Reed hard and hard. Dr. Reed's body sank and then rebounded. Jessica was thrown back on the spot. Jessica cursed, your ability is disgusting, just like yours. Hey, you are suspected of personal assault. Dr. Reed was very dissatisfied. He didn't want to fight this battle, but it was obvious that Jessica didn't think so. She wanted to arrest these three weird guys. Spider-Man faced Ben the Stone. The Stone Man was too clumsy and couldn't keep up with Spider-Man's speed. He cursed and picked up something next to him and hit Spider-Man. Stop smashing it. The police station will accuse me of vandalizing public property again. It's obviously you criminals who did the vandalism, okay? The chatty Spider-Man yelled, and his words made the thing even more angry, and he picked up a car and threw it at Spider-Man. Wow, you're so strong. Well, you're in trouble. This car is a Mercedes-Benz and you have to pay a lot of money. Spider-Man continued to talk while running away. The onlookers were speechless. Can't you be more neat when you deal with criminals? Just like Spider-Woman, she never causes trouble to the City Hall or the police. Spider-Woman Gwen faced off against Jonathan the Human Torch. Because she was caught in a spider web, the Human Torch turned into a full-body flame form. The spider web was burned on the spot and the road was melted. At this time, the Human Torch had not yet learned how to use flames to fly, so he proudly said to Gwen, "Have you seen how powerful I am?" Gwen, dressed in a black and white spider suit, asked, "Do you know what is the biggest difference between humans and animals?" Human Torch said arrogantly, "The biggest difference is that humans have handsome guys, like me." The answer is, people use tools. Gwen kicked open the fire hose next to her, then stepped on the water column. The water column changed direction and sprayed onto Human Torch. Human Torch was blown away on the spot. The flames on his body were quickly extinguished, and a large amount of water vapor appeared next to him. The Human Torch was not wearing a uniform this time, and his clothes were burned by the previous flames. At this moment, the flames disappeared, and he was lying naked on the ground. Wow! A group of onlookers frantically took pictures of the Human Torch. The Human Torch was a handsome guy who looked like the illegitimate son of Captain America. The only flaw was that his figure was not as good as that of the captain. What kind of bad ability is this? Gwen quickly looked away, and at this moment, Sky's voice sounded from the earphones, "Gwen, Director George is coming this way." What? Gwen was shocked and immediately chose to leave. She didn't dare to meet George. You know, George hated Spider-Man very much, hated both of them. Jessica saw this and left with her. Anyway, the matter was almost resolved. God, nothing has gone well lately. Dr. Reed cursed, took off his clothes and covered the Human Torch. There were boos all around. Seeing that the Human Torch had made a big ugly appearance, the Thing was not in the mood to cause trouble again, and sat down on the ground with a thud, looking annoyed. Just as Spider-Man was trying to comfort him, Andrew's sports car and Director George's helicopter arrived one after another. Whether it was Andrew or Director George, Spider-Man was a little scared and ran away immediately. Then, Dr. Reed and the other three were brought back to the police station by Chief George. Susan felt sorry for her brother and went to the police station with them to bail him out. In the New York Police Department, Ben's fiancée placed the engagement ring in front of him and said with tears, "I'm sorry, Ben, I really can't accept it." After saying that, his fiancée turned around and ran away. The Stone Man was so desperate that he not only turned into this ghostly appearance, but even his fiancée ran away. Dr. Reed comforted, "Ben, I will definitely find a way to change you back." Really? Reed? The Stone Man seemed to be grabbing the last straw and shouted excitedly. The Thunderbolt, who had changed into a bathrobe, said angrily, "I don't want to change back. I'm so capable." As soon as the Human Torch finished speaking, Susan raised his ears. Then, Susan pulled the Human Torch aside and scolded loudly, "Do you think having superpowers is great? No matter how powerful you are, can you be as powerful as Iron Man? I've been kidnapped twice." Chapter 95 Suggestions. You are listening at MTnovel. Iron Man is hacked every day. Andrew complained. At this time, Coulson, who had been away for a long time, came to the police station to bail Dr. Reed and the others. It was obvious that S.H.I.E.L.D. was interested in the Fantastic Three. Although Director George was unwilling to do so, he still had no choice but to let Dr. Reed and the others go. He sighed, when will the police department have its own super warrior? At this time, Andrew's voice sounded next to Director George. "Director George, have you ever thought about turning Spider-Man and the others into vigilantes? This way you can communicate with each other and better protect New York." Mr. Wong. Director George recognized this big benefactor who had always supported him and said, "They are criminals, not vigilantes. It's you who treat them as criminals, and they become criminals." Andrew said, "Essentially, they are just a few passionate young people who, if someone is willing to guide them, will become the patron saints of New York citizens." Director George said, unconvinced. The patron saint of New York citizens is our police. Also, Spider-Man is unreliable. He has destroyed dozens of public properties this month. By the way, today is only the third day. Andrew smiled and asked, if that's the case, why are you desperately looking for super warriors? Director George was speechless. He said stubbornly, New York cannot invite unknown people to be vigilantes. If they want to be vigilantes, they must take off their hoods first. It's dangerous for them to reveal their identity. Not everyone is as rich and powerful as Tony Stark. Andrew said, however, there is no workaround. They can tell their identity to a trustworthy person, such as Iron Man, so that if something happens in the future, the police station can ask Iron Man to reveal their identity. Director George's eyes lit up. Could this be possible? In addition, after allowing them to serve as vigilantes, the police department can establish a foundation to receive donations from all walks of life to make up for the losses they have caused. Andrew continued, you can also entrust manufacturers to sell their peripherals. Donations, merch. Director George was surprised. No wonder he could become a billionaire at such a young age. It was really unusual. If he had a brain like his, he wouldn't have no money to buy a bigger house. However, there are two things I want to remind you first. First, you and the vigilantes are in a cooperative relationship, not superiors and subordinates. Don't think about ordering them. You should guide them. Andrew said, second, commercialization should be limited and should not go too far. Once the degree of commercialization is too high, superheroes will inevitably deteriorate. Being a superhero is never about making money. Director George said gratefully, Mr. Wong, thank you for your proposal, I will seriously consider it. Andrew nodded, turned and left. He said all this to improve the relationship between Spider-Woman and Director George, so as to avoid any father-daughter antagonism drama in the future. It would be too boring, I'm such a good boyfriend, he's so considerate. At this time, Susan came over angrily and said, that guy Jonathan left with the people from S.H.I.E.L.D. That Coulson is smiling, and you can tell at a glance that he is not a good person. Coulson is going to cry. Andrew smiled and said, Susan, this is a good thing. S.H.I.E.L.D. has enough strength to help Jonathan clean up the mess. Jonathan is a smart kid. If he hits the wall a few more times, he will mature. I'm afraid he'll be hit and killed. Susan said angrily, and Andrew smiled and said, don't worry, he won't die that easily. There is an old saying in the East that disaster will last for thousands of years. Susan gave Andrew a roll of her eyes and said, are you scolding my brother? Andrew didn't answer. He mentioned another thing, Susan, the money earned from Stark Group has been transferred back to Rebirth Group. You should work harder recently to completely take down Hammer Industries. With enough funds, it will definitely be no problem to acquire Hammer Industries. You are really a win-win this time. Susan nodded first, and then asked a little confused, by the way, now that I have superpowers, why is my life still the same as before? Logically speaking, shouldn't I be a superhero and maintain world peace? Andrew laughed, being a superhero? Susan, if you encounter any disaster, I think it would be better for you to call me. Susan actually wanted to be a superhero. She said a little reluctantly, that's true, but in this case, what's the point of getting superpowers? Being a female CEO doesn't require invisibility, let alone an energy barrier. Well, actually I can also become invisible. We can try it. Roll. At the S.H.I.E.L.D. New York branch, Coulson extended his hand to Dr. Reed with a smile on his face, welcome to S.H.I.E.L.D. I didn't join S.H.I.E.L.D., I just cooperated with you. Dr. Reed corrected that if he had a choice, he actually didn't want to have anything to do with a spy agency like S.H.I.E.L.D. The problem was that he had no choice because he was bankrupt again. The Cosmic Storm project was Reed's own project, and Stark Group only invested in it. This time, the project completely failed. Dr. Reed's company went bankrupt, and even the laboratory was almost evacuated. In order to save the company and change Ben back to his original appearance, Dr. Reed can only accept funding from S.H.I.E.L.D. and become a partner of S.H.I.E.L.D. Why am I so unlucky? Dr. Reed didn't know how many times he had wailed like this. This time, he not only lost his company, but also Susan. It's the same, Dr. Reed, your abilities need to be trained. I will send professional agents over to train you. Coulson smiled and said that since they are partners, it means that they can ask Dr. Reed and others for help in the future. In other words, S.H.I.E.L.D's strength has grown again, the stone man shouted. We don't need to train, we just need to change back. That's you. I'm happy to be trained. I feel like I have a lot of potential. I'll be the next Ghost Rider. He's super cool. The Human Torch said excitedly. Seeing that the Human Torch and the Thing were about to quarrel, Dr. Reed hurriedly broke up the fight. Coulson secretly shook his head. Their abilities were good, but they were still a long way from being real superheroes. At the Malibu villa, Pepper shouted to Tony, who had just returned from the hospital, Tony Stark, you must give up being a superhero. You have been in danger several times. I often encountered danger before because I was too weak before, and I won't be anymore. Tony said, everyone thinks that I have no mutation due to the protection of the suit. They are wrong. I, Tony Stark, also have superpowers. Pepper was stunned. You also have superpowers. What superpowers? Tony said proudly. I have endless energy, which means I can work 24 hours a day without sleeping. What use does this overtime ability have in combat? Pepper gushed. Will it stop you from being kidnapped? Overtime power. Tony's face was a little dark, and he said, of course, my most important thing is wisdom. Being able to work endlessly means that the steel suit will be updated at an unprecedented speed. It won't be long before I can defeat all enemies. After a pause, Tony said to Pepper with a little excitement, Pepper, you have endless energy and you will never get tired. Chapter 96 Prison Break. You are listening at MTnovel. What's that expression on your face? Hey, wait, endless energy. This power seems pretty good. Pepper thought of something, her eyes lit up, and then she rolled her eyes at Tony. Not serious at all, Pepper said. Tony, let's make a deal. If you are kidnapped again and your life is in danger again, you will give up being a superhero. Well, how about 3 times? Well, there will never be a next time. Tony chose to agree, and Pepper breathed a sigh of relief. She said, let's talk about the company now. The company's situation has not been very good recently. Someone on the board of directors suggested selling the weapons research and development department. It is not needed now anyway. Absolutely not. The weapons research and development department was left to me by Howard. I don't want to be a spendthrift. Tony shook his head repeatedly, and Pepper said, Tony, we need some ways to stabilize the stock price. Little things. Tony said confidently, I am ready to sell a steel suit to the military and reach other cooperation with the military. In this way, our stock price will recover. Pepper was stunned. Are you willing to sell your battle clothes? Sold to Rhodes, I gave him a war machine. Tony said, the world is getting more and more dangerous, and I need some help. If this is the case, there is indeed no need to sell the weapons research and development department. Tony, I will take care of this matter. Pepper said enthusiastically. At this time, she thought of something and reminded, Tony, don't invest in Dr. Reed. Someone told me that no one who invests in Dr. Reed will end well. This is the original rebirth. That's why the group didn't invest in Dr. Reed. Little Pepper, when did you become so unscientific? The Rebirth Group, well, that guy from the Rebirth Group is very unscientific. Tony said, in short, I don't believe this. Although the losses were heavy this time, and even the space station was completely destroyed, if there is an opportunity in the future, I will continue to invest in Dr. Reed. Even angels appeared. Isn't it normal for destiny to exist? Pepper said, it is said that S.H.I.E.L.D. is preparing to invest in Dr. Reed. Let's take a look first. 3 days later, at night, the island prison, John Garrett came outside Mystique's room and asked, "Mystique, are you looking for me?" "Yes, I'm looking for you." Mystique, who was still tightly bound, said to Garrett, "John Garrett, I came to you to thank you for taking care of me for so many days." Garrett was keenly aware that something was wrong. He put his hand on the gun at his waist and sneered, "Just you? Mystique, don't force me to torture you. Not by me, but by Magneto." Mystique sneered, and Garrett was shocked. Did something happen to Magneto? At this moment, the guard's horrified shout came from the communicator, "Magneto has broken out of the glass prison." That's right, Magneto came out of the glass and plastic room. How did he come out? Very simple, use an iron bookmark. There is a mutant in the island prison whose ability is to transform matter, for example, turning stones into gold. However, this can only last for 2 hours. He was arrested by S.H.I.E.L.D. for using fake gold to defraud. Mystique reached cooperation with the Deception mutant through spiritual communication. When the Deception mutant was eating, he secretly pocketed the discarded iron pieces given to him by others. Then, the deceived mutant went to the library, turned the discarded iron pieces into paper bookmarks and stuck them in a certain book. This book will be sent to Magneto in an hour. Maybe someone is surprised. Why can mutants move freely in the island prison and read books in the library? The reason is simple. Professor Charles fought for them. The professor couldn't bear to see mutants kept in prison and asked S.H.I.E.L.D. to give them some freedom and entertainment. S.H.I.E.L.D. needed the help of the X-Men, so they did not refuse the professor's request. They changed the island prison into a general area and a felon area. The felon area houses mutants who have committed more serious crimes and have relatively powerful abilities. They have no time for activities and have been kept in prison. Even their meals are specially brought to them by guards. Criminals in the general area are relatively free. They can eat together, chat, play chess, go to the library to read, etc. These are activities that are not strenuous and occupy a small area. Of course, this is the only limit. The island prison is different from the ordinary prison. The benefits of the ordinary prison are not available here at all. Magneto flipped through the book in the cell for a while, and the bookmark turned into a scrap of iron, and then the killing began. Garrett shouted in shock and anger, "Disconnect the plastic corridor immediately, sink the glass prison to the bottom of the sea, and also send an alert to S.H.I.E.L.D., the highest level alert." Just as the guard was about to press the button, an iron piece shot through the glass door and went into his head. He fell down with an expression of disbelief. Several other guards turned around and tried to escape. At this time, pieces of iron flew out and cut their throats. Immediately afterwards, the iron piece shattered the plastic door, and Magneto strode into the island prison. The entire prison shook at the same time, seeming to be afraid of his arrival. The screams in the communicator made Garrett feel as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. As he fled towards the tarmac, he shouted loudly, "Magneto escapes and activates the self-destruction device." Because the prison is full of felons and mutants, and there are many shady things going on, S.H.I.E.L.D. has installed a self-destruct device in the prison. Once activated, the entire prison will sink to the bottom of the sea. At this moment, there was movement from behind. Garrett turned around and saw that the iron door outside Mystique's room was forcibly removed by a force. Then, the iron door banged twice and the 2 guards flew away. Pressing towards Garrett, although Garrett tried his best to avoid it, he was still hit hard by the iron door and fell to the ground. Then, Mystique walked out of the room, stepped on the iron door with her foot, and said to Garrett with a smile on her face, "I'll do it." "Thank you, Garrett." Garrett's heart sank. He knew that he was finished. At the same time, in the secret room, 2 guards were preparing to activate the self-destruction device. Suddenly, the iron wire next to them wrapped around their necks and hung them high. Magneto smiled disdainfully. In this metal prison, he was God. It is worth mentioning that the reason Magneto can control metal outside his sight so accurately is because the scan is helping him, projecting the situation in the prison into Magneto's mind. "My fellow citizens, you are free." Magneto raised his hands, and a large number of prison iron doors were destroyed. Mutant prisoners and felons rushed out of the prison, excitedly rushing towards the guards. Toad threw a guard to the ground, opened his mouth and sprayed acid all over his face. Then, he shouted ferociously at the screaming guard, "I told you, you will die badly." The saber-toothed tiger knocked a guard away with one punch and shouted excitedly, full of joy. The same was true for the other mutants. During this period, they were often taken care of by the guards. Sloane grabbed one of the guards' guns, and with a bang, the bullet streaked across a semicircle in the air, taking away the lives of the 3 guards. The entire island prison was in chaos. Facing mutant prisoners with various abilities and various felons, the guards were no match at all. Many guards were ready to escape, but whether they were submarines or planes, they were all controlled by Magneto from the air. The isolated island prison was completely destroyed in a short period of time, and thousands of felons and mutants regained their freedom. Chapter 97 Requirements. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. At S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, Nick Fury received an alert from the island prison and couldn't help but curse. Why did something happen again? If there is no Magneto in the isolated island prison, then this matter can be easily solved. At worst, the missiles will be launched to sink the isolated island prison. The problem is that Magneto is there, which means that neither missiles nor nuclear bombs are useless. Nick Fury was thinking about countermeasures. At this time, Pierce called. He was exhausted and said, "Fury, we must not let the people in the island prison escape, otherwise, even I won't be able to protect you this time." "I know I'm going to stop them." Nick Fury nodded gloomily. Then, he called Coulson and ordered, "Take the Avengers, Dr. Reed and the others to the island prison. We must not allow Magneto and others to successfully escape from prison." "Yes, Director, I will summon everyone right away." Coulson immediately agreed, and then he began to summon the Avengers and Dr. Reed. After ordering Coulson, Nick Fury called Professor Charles and asked him to help. However, contrary to his expectations, Professor Charles did not agree immediately, but remained silent for a while. Nick Fury had a sudden thought and asked, "Professor, is there something wrong?" Professor Charles asked, "Director Fury, do you know about the mutant antidote plan?" Nick Fury instantly understood what the problem was, and he cursed in his mind, "What are the government people doing, so that such a confidential matter can be leaked?" "Professor, I do know about this matter, but it is not controlled by S.H.I.E.L.D. I am only aware of it." Nick Fury said, "In addition, the government does not want to exterminate mutants, they just want to have weapons to fight mutants, and they will only use antidotes on mutant criminals." Professor Charles asked, "Director Fury, if you were a mutant, would you allow such an antidote to exist?" Nick Fury was silent. After a moment, he said, "Professor, deal with Magneto and the others first. Afterwards, I will help you apply to the President to suspend the antidote plan." Professor Charles said, "I hope the Worthington Laboratory will give us the leech. He is just a child and should not be in the laboratory. How useless are those guys? They even leaked the name of the laboratory." Nick Fury cursed secretly and said, "Professor, I will try my best to help you solve this matter. The premise is to prevent Magneto from escaping from prison. Otherwise, nothing I say will be of any use. This time, I will help, but next time, I may not." Professor Charles said that Nick Fury put down his phone and looked a little solemn. Professor Charles's meaning was obvious: if he could not solve the matter afterwards, the X-Men would cease cooperation with S.H.I.E.L.D. At the Mutant Academy, Wolverine said unhappily, "Professor, you are too soft. We should force them to hand over the leeches to us, or we can directly attack the Worthington Laboratory and snatch the child back." "Logan, for the first time, I agree with you," Cyclops said, and Wolverine rolled his eyes, not bothering to pay attention to the guy. The professor shook his head and said, "It's not good to be too tough. You have to give humans a chance. The problem is, humans won't necessarily give us a chance." Beast Hank said, "The antidote must never appear. With mankind's hatred of mutants, the government is likely to force all mutants to become ordinary people. Deal with Eric and the others first before talking about anything else. We can't let them cause trouble anymore." Professor Charles sighed and controlled the wheelchair to go to the room where the brainwave intensifier was. Soon, Professor Charles put on a brainwave enhancement device, but to his surprise, the island prison only had one consciousness, a group consciousness composed of thousands of people. Spiritual connection. Can you actually connect so many people? Professor Charles reluctantly took off the brainwave enhancement device. The consciousnesses of so many people were connected together. Even he could not accurately control someone unless he was face to face with that person. While the brainwave intensifier amplified Professor Charles's brainwaves, it significantly reduced his control. Then, Professor Charles told Nick Fury the situation and said, "I will lead the X-Men to the island prison to prevent Magneto from escaping. Sorry to bother you." Nick Fury was a little disappointed. At this time, Hill walked in with a tablet and said hurriedly, "Magneto is not planning to escape. He is planning to lead the prisoners to attack New York. This is a picture taken by a satellite. Attack New York? Magneto, what do you want to do?" Nick Fury was shocked. He glanced at the satellite image and hurriedly called Coulson and said, "Change the plan and set up defenses in the Brooklyn dock area. Magneto is preparing to attack New York." Attack New York? Coulson was also surprised. He hurriedly said, "I will have the agents and superheroes prepare and wait for the arrival of Magneto and the others in the dock area." Nick Fury ordered, "No matter what, they must be stopped at the dock and they cannot be allowed to enter the city." Clear. Coulson nodded. He touched the remaining hair with a melancholy look on his face. No wonder Garrett was so happy when he came back. New York is really a terrible place. Let's move forward in time a little. To Island Prison. Magneto walked into the room with the scan. He looked at Mystique, who was torturing Garrett, and said, "Kill him directly. There is no need to waste time on him." Mystique said bitterly, "He reminds me of the years I was tortured by Trask Industries. Humans deserve to die." Magneto raised his hand, and a steel instrument flew out of Garrett's abdomen. Garrett screamed, and he stretched out his hand and shouted in horror, "No, give it back to me." Garrett suffered severe abdominal injuries in his early years. In order to survive, he turned to Hydra, which transformed him into a death warrior and used steel instruments to maintain his life. Without this instrument, Garrett would die soon. "You just stay here to die, Garrett." Mystique snorted and followed Magneto out of the room. Magneto raised his hand and the door slammed shut, leaving only Garrett's desperate scream in the room. This bad breath is finally gone. Mystique exhaled. She thought of something and said to Scan, "Let's join forces to connect everyone's consciousness. With Charles's character, he will definitely help S.H.I.E.L.D. deal with us." Scan said hesitantly, "There are so many people, I may not be able to do it." "I will help you, and besides, someone will help us." Mystique turned into a scanning form and said with a smile. At the same time, Toad, Saber-Tooth Tiger, and Life-Link mutants came over with a group of captives. Then, Mystique and Scan joined forces to connect the consciousnesses of everyone in the prison and form a large group consciousness. With it, not even Charles could control them. Magneto nodded with satisfaction. He had already thought out all the plans before taking action. He was not an impulsive person. Speaking of which, Magneto misses his helmet a little bit and wonders where S.H.I.E.L.D. put it. Chapter 98: Brain-Eating Worms. You are listening at MTnovel. After eliminating the professor's threat, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Mystique asked the Scan to maintain group consciousness and return to her original appearance. Then, Mystique of the Magneto dynasty said, "Contact the Red Devil and ask him to come over. His abilities are very useful." Mystique found the phone from the broadcast room and dialed the Red Devil. She said, "Asazo, come here and save me. I will tell you the whereabouts of that child. Ruewen, you are really capable. You can even make phone calls in Lonely Island Prison." The Red Devil was a little surprised and teleported to Mystique. As soon as he appeared, he saw Magneto raise his hand. The expression of the Red Devil in the red mist state changed and he disappeared immediately. Magneto was a little shocked. When did the Red Devil's teleportation speed become so fast? Riven, are you plotting against me? You will pay the price. The Red Devil threw away the phone in anger. Fortunately, his strength had greatly increased recently, otherwise he would have been tricked by Mystique and Magneto this time. There is no need to look for my son in the future. If you follow the Demon King, you will be able to rescue your own people sooner or later. The Demon King is super powerful. My current strength is at least several times stronger than before. The Red Devil thought of something, picked up the phone and called Andrew, saying, "Boss, Mystique, Magneto and the others are preparing to cause trouble again." Huh? So diligent? Andrew was a little surprised, and immediately turned his attention to the isolated island prison, and found that the entire prison had been controlled by mutants and felons, and S.H.I.E.L.D. staff were either captured or killed. At the same time, Andrew also discovered the clairvoyant John Garrett. He was about to die, but his will was very strong and he kept gritting his teeth to hold on. He didn't want to die. He had been holding on for decades and would continue to hold on. It's interesting. It's time to plant a nail in S.H.I.E.L.D. Andrew pulled Garrett into the illusion and said, "Sign a contract and give me your soul, and I will protect you from death." "I'll sign." Garrett didn't waste any time and signed the contract immediately. Then, Andrew teleported him to Ethan's laboratory in the rebirth hell. "Ethan, come to life." Andrew said, "Get him a mechanical gut and let him live." "Why is it a mechanical viscera again?" Garrett was dumbfounded. Is there something wrong with this style of painting? In fact, Garrett is ready to be transformed into a demon. Ethan checked some of Garrett's wounds and said hesitantly, "The mechanical viscera is still in the experimental stage. It is a bit difficult for him and may not succeed." Andrew said, "It's okay. If it fails, I will use healing techniques to repair his wounds and make him recover as before." Ethan nodded, "That's no problem." Garrett looked at Ethan expectantly after hearing this, and Ethan smiled and said, "Don't worry, I will do my best to cure you." Garrett said in a weak tone, "No, doctor, try to fail." Ethan's face was a little dark. This was the first time he had heard such a request for so many years as a copycat doctor. He gritted his teeth and said, "Bet on my machine body, I promise to cure you." Garrett. Andrew smiled, left Ethan's laboratory and came outside, where he found Hulk using a sledgehammer to smash the robot under the guidance of Taskmaster. "Yes, sledgehammer, Hulk loves to use hammers," the master of imitation taught in a cold voice. "Hulk, don't just smash around. Also, you have to save some energy to change your moves, don't use all your strength." "Hulk, smash it." Hulk didn't take it seriously and threw random hits at the flying robot. Taskmaster shook his head without getting angry and continued to teach Hulk that she never lacked patience. It's quite a loving scene. Andrew shook his head, went to the big boss's laboratory, and asked, "How is the research on cosmic storms going?" "Cosmic storm is a big project, and it won't be completed so quickly." The big boss said, "However, I have already achieved results with the potion that speeds up self-healing." After saying that, the big boss took out a box of plaster and a bottle of medicine. This plaster can remove scars and takes effect in 1 day. This medicine is a purified version of the previous medicine. After drinking it, the wound will heal quickly. They are all good, but the market potential is not high. If you keep working hard, you can develop into whitening and rejuvenation. Andrew said that the market potential he was talking about was not how much money it could be sold for, but how many souls it could exchange for. As much as possible. The big boss said that his energy is basically focused on the cosmic storm and Hulk's blood, and a quick self-healing potion is just a small project. Andrew said nothing more and went to check Howard and Trask's research. Howard is researching artificial intelligence and is almost successful, while Trask is building more mutant instruments that will provide him with a wealth of experience. In the end, he will create a real Sentinel robot. It's good and thriving. Andrew nodded with satisfaction. He looked at the factory area and thought to himself, now that there are tens of thousands of souls, perhaps we should consider building a city and truly start a mechanical civilization. In the isolated island prison, seeing the Red Devil disappear, Mystique looked a little ugly. She said to Magneto, "The plan failed, we can't raid the Mutant Academy." "It doesn't matter, everything can never go as planned." Magneto didn't care. He had failed countless times in his life and was not so glass-hearted. He thought about it and said, "We will lead people to attack New York. With Charles's character, he will definitely help S.H.I.E.L.D. stop us. At that time, you find an opportunity to contact Charles, and then quietly go to the Mutant Academy to use the brainwave enhancement device to kill all humans." "Kill all humans?" Andrew's eyes lit up when he heard this. Lao 1 was very capable, and each plan was bigger than the last. "When he and Mystique die, be sure to give them the Best Employee Award from Hell." Andrew smiled and said, "Of course, their plan may not succeed. Superheroes are not vegetarians. More importantly, there is a super boss on the X-Men side. It doesn't matter whether it works or not, just watch the show." Andrew said he was not in a hurry at all. Here, after listening to what Magneto said, Mystique nodded and said, "Just do it this way, the end of mankind is coming soon." Magneto thought for a moment and said, "Riven, record my X gene. If anything goes wrong, we can work together to defeat the X-Men." Mystique put her hand on Magneto and said with a smile, "They will definitely not think that we have two Magnetos." After Mystique finished copying the genes, Magneto Toad ordered, "Go to the lowest level and release all the abominations, vampires, and lizard men who were used as experimental subjects. I believe they are happy to make humans pay the price." Mystique reminded, "Abomination is too dangerous. Don't unblock him yet. Then we will just throw him from the sky. He won't die anyway. Hatred has always been in a frozen state. With his character, he will not be an experimental subject. Clear?" Toad nodded and took a few mutants to rescue the experimental subjects. Then, Magneto said to all the prisoners in the prison through spiritual connection, "Everyone go to the deck, I will take you back to New York, and then you can do whatever you want." Long live Magneto. Mutants and felons cheered together, holding stolen guns and looking ferocious. It was time for New Yorkers to see their fury. Magneto nodded with satisfaction. He thought for a moment and moved all the missiles and bombs in the prison to the deck. These things would come in handy. Firefox was also imprisoned in the island prison. She frowned and said to Sloane, "Sloane, you can't do this, they will kill many people." "So what?" Sloane held the gun and said angrily, "S.H.I.E.L.D. has tortured me for so long, and I want them to die miserably." Sloane was also on the space station at the time. In order to confirm whether he had any powers, Garrett tortured him a lot during this time. Sloane was filled with resentment and his character gradually became distorted. "We are assassins of fate, not villains," shouted Firefox. "The assassin of destiny," Sloane sneered, "if I told you that the people you killed were actually orders placed by black market customers, what would you think?" Firefox shouted in disbelief. "What? This is impossible. Nothing is impossible. You are just my tool. You were and still are." While speaking, Sloane opened his right hand, and a black bug the size of a fingernail flew out of his palm and burrowed into Firefox's cheek. Then, the black bug followed the blood and entered Firefox's brain. Firefox's eyes became confused, and she stood beside Sloane expressionlessly, waiting for his order. "This is Sloane's superpower, the brain-eating worms. Brain-eating worms can not only control others, but also eat the host's brain and reproduce more bugs. However, this insect has a fatal weakness, that is, it is afraid of low temperatures. At low temperatures, the insects will die. This power is terrible, but its shortcomings are also obvious, so no matter how Garrett tortured Sloane, Sloane didn't say anything. As for blood tests and the like, the bugs haven't hatched yet, so there's no way to detect them at all." After controlling Firefox, Sloane went all out and took control of Big Back Head, Butcher, Tinker and others. He thought crazily, "I want to use New Yorkers to feed my bugs, I want to make all New Yorkers become worms. Become my slave, and I will rule New York, and even the whole world." Soon, all the prisoners were transferred to the deck. Magneto opened his hands, and cracking sounds were heard from below the deck. A moment later, the deck broke away from the prison and surfaced with a crash. At the same time, the island prison slowly sank to the bottom of the sea. It wasn't over yet. Magneto waved his hand, the upper lid opened, and the bright moonlight poured into the prison. The prisoners were very excited to see the moon again, cheering loudly, and some even shot into the sky. "Let's go." Magneto laughed, and the control deck flew towards New York at high speed. Magneto is not that impulsive. There must be a conspiracy when he chooses to attack New York. At the S.H.I.E.L.D. command, Nick Fury thought for a while and opened the live broadcast on Quaisho familiarly. The new host of Bugle TV was broadcasting news about the island prison. "Melinda is doing a great job and has become a host." Nick Fury nodded when he saw the Asian female host with a cold face on the screen. The other person was Melinda May, a level 7 agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Melinda said expressionlessly, "According to the news we received, there was a riot in the lonely island prison. Magneto has escaped and is leading an army of prisoners towards New York." Then, the screen split into two, with one half showing Melinda and the other half showing the flying prison deck, a large high-definition picture, much better than Nick Fury's satellite picture. "I believe everyone is wondering what kind of prison is Gudao Prison, and why have they never heard of it?" Melinda said, "Let's start from the beginning. Viewers should remember that our Clarion TV station has been investigating a mysterious organization that hides the truth and secretly deletes our mobile phone data. After verification by our TV station, this organization is called S.H.I.E.L.D., whose full name is the Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency. They are an agency affiliated with the United Nations and are responsible for handling strange incidents." Nick Fury looked confused. He asked Maria Hill, "Did Melinda defect?" "I think it's quite similar." Hill smiled and said, "Find a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent to break S.H.I.E.L.D. news. The editor-in-chief of the Daily Bugle is really talented." She asked, "Do you want to interrupt the live broadcast of Bugle TV?" "It cannot be interrupted. Quaidwa has been ignoring our requests to monitor the content." Nick Fury shook his head and said, "In addition, Bugle TV is now famous all over the world. It is difficult to stop them. The United States is a free society, at least on the surface. After this incident is over, the media and the World Security Council will all attack me, and we must find a way to solve it." Nick Fury's eyes flashed slightly. The world cannot live without him and he cannot step down. In addition, if he steps down now, many things will be exposed, such as the money he embezzled, the safe house he has been building, and the things he has hidden. Various secrets. The host Melinda was thinking, Director Fury would not wear small shoes for herself in the future, right? Of course, this doesn't stop her from continuing to break the news. The island prison is a prison where S.H.I.E.L.D. holds special criminals. Magneto, Abomination, and Mystique are all imprisoned in the island prison. Unfortunately, S.H.I.E.L.D. messed up as before. Magneto successfully escaped from prison, and he brought a large number of extremely vicious criminals to prepare to bloodbath New York, including abominations, lizard men, and vampires. New Yorkers, especially those in Brooklyn, please leave as soon as possible. Unfortunately, the disaster has begun again. S.H.I.E.L.D., my regards to your family. The citizens of New York yelled, "Why are you housing so many criminals if you don't have the ability?" What's even more outrageous is that the island prison is actually built off the coast of New York. I knew that disaster would not let us go so easily. Last time it was not the end, it was just the intermission. An old New Yorker sighed. It seems that New York has not turned around yet. While cursing and sighing, the citizens of Brooklyn ran wildly out. Magneto, Mystique, Abomination, lizard men, vampires, this is the rhythm of the end. S.H.I.E.L.D., this organization has been hiding the truth. In addition, my life experience is also related to them. Skye looked at the live broadcast, her eyes full of light. At this moment, Gwen's voice sounded from the speaker, "Skye, Jessica, and I are rushing to Brooklyn. Please help me calculate." "Magneto and the others, where will it land?" Skye replied, at a pier in Brooklyn, S.H.I.E.L.D. and superheroes have set up defenses there. Okay. Gwen nodded and rushed to the dock at full speed. Chapter 99 Attack. You are listening at MaleProtagonist. At the same time, Peter Parker, who had promised to go to the Mary Jane opera, abandoned his motorcycle and a bouquet of flowers to become Spider-Man again, the bouquet of flowers he bought with all the money in his pocket. Disaster. Susan, who was about to go home, hesitated. After a moment, she gritted her teeth, put on her uniform and headed to the dock area. After all, she still wanted to be a superhero, which was a completely different feeling from being a female president. In the Brooklyn dock area, Tony Stark was wearing a new Mark suit, hiding behind a container and constantly drawing towards the sky. Tony, what are you doing? You feel so obscene, asked Dr. Banner, a big green man. He was wearing a large combat uniform and looked a little funny. He was not fierce at all, his face was honest. What is obscene? Tony said angrily. I've been waiting for months, and finally I've got the chance to avenge my shame. I'm going to kill that bastard Magneto here with a laser, and by the way, Mystique. Dr. Banner was stunned. Laser? Yes, the laser will not be controlled by Magneto, and it is extremely fast. As long as I am caught off guard, it will definitely kill Magneto. Tony said excitedly, I want the whole world to know that I, Tony Stark, am no longer the same person I used to be. Moreover, I must avenge myself. If Magneto is not prepared, the success rate is indeed very high. Dr. Banner thought for a moment and nodded. Tony said, of course. By the way, Dr. Banner, are you sure you can defeat that abomination now? Dr. Banner smiled, of course, no. Tony complained, you still speak so loudly without you. Although I'm not sure I can defeat Abomination, I can be used as a human shield and you can defeat him. Dr. Banner said with great self-knowledge that although he had been training during this period, he was a weak scholar with no motor nerves and could never become a master no matter how hard he trained. Tony said, when I kill Magneto, I will help you. From now on, everyone will call me Assassin King Tony. Old Green Goblin Norman looked unhappy when he heard the conversation between Tony and Dr. Banner. He even wanted to tip off Magneto, but he thought about it and did not do so. It's not that Norman's conscience found out, but that he didn't have Magneto's phone number, so it was difficult to inform him. The stock price, how can the Osborn Group stock price rise? Norman had a frown on his face. If the stock price did not rise, his position would be unstable. If his position was unstable, he would not be able to invest the company's funds in the research of human enhancement drugs. Norman still has no intention of giving up on the human enhancement potion, because his son Harry needs the human enhancement potion, and he does not want his son to become a lunatic like Blonsky. There are more and more superheroes. Professor Charles, who was sitting in a wheelchair, sighed, while Wolverine was holding a cigar and said, there are not many reliable ones. They are either narcissists or funny characters. The X-Men laughed, and Professor Charles shook his head. He vaguely felt that the times were changing, but he didn't know if there would be a place for their mutants to gain a foothold in the future era. In addition to the above people, the Fantastic Three and Barton also came. The Thunderbolt in uniform asked Barton curiously, Barton, what special powers do you have? The bow and arrow are my special power. Barton replied coolly, and the Human Torch wanted to ask anything else. At this time, Professor Charles sounded the alarm, Magneto is coming. Everyone hurriedly looked up and saw the deck of the Lonely Island prison flying towards them quickly. Standing at the front was Magneto. He immediately noticed the superheroes and agents on the dock and raised his hands with disdain. This is your thing, give it back to you. Magneto waved his hand, and dozens of missiles plus a super bomb for self-destruction were shot towards the dock area at the same time. Everyone's expressions changed drastically, and Coulson hurriedly shouted, use non-metallic means to intercept the missile, and the remaining people will avoid it. I come. The Human Torch roared and pushed his hands forward, sending two huge fireballs towards the incoming missile. Cyclops didn't talk nonsense. He put his hand next to his glasses and swept a red laser across the missiles in the sky. Storm's eyes turned white and she flew into the sky. Lightnings fell from the sky. Jean used her telekinesis to control the missiles to collide together. Magneto couldn't help but glance at her. When did her telekinesis become so strong? Can you even resist your own magnetism? Magneto's eyes narrowed slightly. Has her hidden power awakened? Depend on. Tony cursed and flew out to use laser attack missiles. Although he was far away from being hit by the missiles, others would, and he couldn't just watch his own people die. Tony cannot be the assassin king because he is not ruthless enough. A real assassin will not care about the life or death of his own people, but will only wait for the best assassination opportunity like a dead thing. Although Tony is careless, narcissistic, arrogant, venomous, irreverent, arrogant, and obsessed with winning and losing, there is no doubt that he is a real superhero, and he will become more and more responsible, with the efforts of everyone. The missiles exploded in the air one after another, air waves swept across. Flames flew randomly, and the entire dock area was shaking. After successfully dealing with the missiles, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. At this moment, more than 10 missiles emerged from the sea and bombarded everyone in the dock area one after another. Everyone's expressions changed, but they had no time to stop them. At the critical moment, a translucent spiritual barrier appeared. A large number of missiles hit the barrier and exploded. The barrier rippled, but it was very strong and did not break. Immediately afterwards, the barrier disappeared, and Professor Charles controlled the wheelchair and slowly came forward. It was obvious that he was the one who took action just now. Magneto controlled the prison deck and stopped in front of the dock area. Then, he asked Professor Charles, "Is this your new ability?" Professor Charles nodded, "Yes, a spiritual barrier to protect everything. Even the ability to evolve as a guardian." "Charles, you are really..." Magneto couldn't help but shake his head, and said, "Unfortunately, what mutants need is not protection, but offense. Forget it, let's not talk about this. Charles, I want to see if you can stop me today." "Old friend, you're not wearing a helmet today." Professor Charles smiled slightly, and the powerful spiritual power penetrated the collective consciousness and entered Magneto's consciousness. Using the brainwave intensification device, Professor Charles cannot individually target a person in the group consciousness, but face to face, there is no problem. However, after all, there is a group consciousness blocking him. Professor Charles can only interfere with Magneto, but cannot completely control him. "We must not let Charles know of our plans." Magneto's expression changed, and he hurriedly fought with Scanner against the erosion of Professor Charles. Professor Charles keenly noticed something, and he said, "Eric, you are hiding a big secret." Chapter 100 Dispersion. You are listening at MTnovel.audio. I hide so many secrets, Charles, you can't control me today. While Magneto struggled to hold on, the control deck was torn apart, and mutants and felons flew into Brooklyn from different directions. The area where Magneto stood did not move. Toad, Saber-Toothed Tiger, and others stood beside him. As for Mystique, she had disappeared. Coulson's expression changed and he shouted hurriedly, "Hurry up and catch up. We must not let them hurt the citizens." "Professor, I leave Magneto to you." "Good." Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Iron Man, the Fantastic Three, Dr. Banner, the Old Green Goblin and others all chased the prisoners, leaving only the X-Men in the dock area. Lao Wan is such a good man. I shouldn't have hit him before. Looking at the panic-stricken Brooklyn area, Andrew, who was drinking tea and watching a movie on the rooftop, couldn't help but nod. He snapped his fingers, and the Reverse Cross spaceship fell from the sky. The robots and Black Widows once again started working to collect souls for the devil. "Boss, I apply to join the battle. I want Magneto to know that his ability is not as good as my instrument." Trask shouted excitedly, and Andrew said, "Don't worry, let the bullet fly for a while. Have you gotten a little taller?" Trask, who has a mechanical body, said, "No, I have always been 4 meters tall." Howard on the side rolled his eyes secretly. "You were only 3 meters tall before, okay?" No, you were only a little over 1 meter tall at the beginning. Defeat the X-Men and embrace a mutant future. On the deck, everyone in the Magneto dynasty ordered. Saber-toothed Tiger couldn't wait. Hearing the words, he immediately jumped from the sky in front of Wolverine and shouted, "Jimmy, long time no see." Wolverine looked at the saber-toothed tiger who had shortened his hair and asked in astonishment, "Big steel teeth? Do I know you very well? Also, who is Jimmy? This name sounds so stupid." "I'm your brother whose blood is thicker than water. As for Jimmy, that's your name. I think it's stupid too. It was given to you by your doctor father." The saber-toothed tiger said, "Your doctor father is not your real father. Your real father is your gardener, which is my father. Later, he was stabbed to death by you." Wolverine looked confused. "What the hell? Isn't this a lot of information?" Wolverine, who had always wanted to retrieve his memory, suddenly felt like giving up. His past seemed a bit tragic. "I'll help you remember, my brother." The saber-toothed tiger laughed loudly, showed his claws and pounced on Wolverine like a hungry tiger. Wolverine dodged while shouting, "Who on earth are you?" "I said, we are brothers." Saber-toothed Tiger shouted that the cosmic storm greatly enhanced his strength and speed, so he is not afraid of Wolverine who possesses adamantium alloy. Wolverine has never been a good-tempered person, so when he saw Saber-toothed Tiger trying to show off, he cursed and brandished his claw blade to fight with the opponent. Soon, his claw blade and saber-toothed tiger's claws pierced the opponent's chest at the same time, and blood sprayed in the air. Bloom freely. Brothers and brothers respect each other, it's really touching. Andrew said. Howard and others were speechless. Is this also called respect between brothers and brothers? While Saber-toothed Tiger and Wolverine were fighting fiercely, the mutants of the Brotherhood jumped onto the dock to fight against their arch-rivals, the X-Men. Toad jumped back and forth flexibly in the dock area, and no lightning could hit him. Then, he opened his mouth and shot acid at Storm in the air like a barrage of cannons. That's disgusting. Storm avoided the acid with the help of the wind, and then she gathered a large thunder ball and blasted it towards the Toad. The Toad jumped onto the container and shot Storm with its tongue like a sharp arrow. Storm hurriedly avoided it, but unexpectedly, the Toad's tongue could actually turn and hit Storm with a bang. Storm was thrown away on the spot. The Toad was unyielding and sprayed acid at Storm. Storm rolled to avoid it, and then she flew into the sky to fight the Toad again. Cyclops faced the enhanced weightlessness, and he had no chance to attack. He kept shaking up and down in the air, and he was extremely embarrassed. Colossus and the others were also fighting, but Sheen stayed beside Professor Charles to protect him and did not take action. At the same time, a certain street in Brooklyn, bang, Abomination hit the street hard, making a big crater in the ground. Immediately afterwards, the coldness on his body quickly disappeared, and his eyes gradually changed from confusion to ferocity. It's hate. The surrounding citizens were shocked and ran outside wildly. Anyone who has watched the live broadcast on Bugle TV knows how terrifying the hatred is. Andrew waved his hand and pulled the citizens into the illusion. A moment later, dozens of robots descended from the sky and took away the contractors who had signed the contract. Abomination ignored the fleeing citizens and robots. He clenched his fists and let out a roar that shattered all the surrounding glass. Hulk. Blonsky, here I come. A big green man walked over from the side. When Hatred saw him, he was happy at first, and then said with a look of disgust, "What I want is Hulk, not a funny character like you." Dr. Banner shouted dissatisfied, "You are funny and hateful. I will not let you do anything else. You are my mistake and I want to make up for it." "Just you." Abomination smiled disdainfully and rushed towards Dr. Banner with a rumble. Dr. Banner took a deep breath and struggled to catch up. Boom. Two huge bodies collided hard, the ground collapsed, and a wave of air swept around. This time, Dr. Banner did not retreat. He roared and punched Abomination on the head. Abomination grabbed Dr. Banner's fist and hit his head hard. Dr. Banner staggered back, and Abomination stepped forward and kicked him hundreds of meters away. Abomination scoffed, you're as funny as ever." Dr. Banner was furious, got up from the ground and rushed towards Abomination again. As he said, he couldn't defeat Abomination, but it was not a big problem to hold him back. Wherever the two big men hit each other, there were screams, and robots kept falling from the sky and taking away the contractors. Not long after, Iron Man flew over. He looked at the robots and hesitated whether to go to Howard, but after thinking about it, he decided to deal with the Abomination with Dr. Banner first. On the other side, 2 lizards and several vampires fell from the sky and pounced viciously on the citizens. These 2 lizard men were compatriots developed by Dr. Lizard. After S.H.I.E.L.D. captured them, they did not inject them with an antidote, but instead locked them in an isolated island prison for research. Therefore, the 2 lizard men were full of anger towards humans. When they saw the citizens, they showed no mercy. With one claw, the 2 citizens were directly torn into pieces. The vampires were also tortured, and they rushed forward and dug their fangs deeply into the necks of the fleeing citizens. "Why did you run out again?" "It's not over yet." Spider-Man arrived here and immediately entangled the 2 lizard men with spider webs. Seeing this, the vampires immediately dropped their prey and pounced on Spider-Man with their big mouths open. Spider-Man nimbly avoided and kicked the vampires away several times, but the vampires quickly got up like nothing happened and pounced on Spider-Man again. At the same time, 2 lizard men tore open the spider web and each picked up a car and threw it at Spider-Man.